Welcome to my talk about compliance, the arch enemy of platform engineering. Because of compliance, you cannot do DevOps because you don't have segregation of duties. All changes must be approved by security, and all changes must be manually tested. People are generally stupid and must be protected from themselves. This actually might be true if your security policy says so, but it doesn't have to be. My name is Skarpeteig. I'm currently the tribe lead at the Global Platform Tribe at Signicat, based in Trondheim, Norway. This is actually my third year at PlatformCon, so very happy to be back. And Signicat is a digital identity provider and a trust service provider based in Europe. And we are also a fast-growing company, and that means that our ability to move fast is extremely beneficial for our company. And we have a lot of customers in regulated sectors: banking, financial institutions, health insurance, government, where security certifications and related certifications is a big part of our value proposition. It's a big part of what we do, and we have a bunch of them. And these are typically audited every year, so it's a recurring thing by a third party, an external auditor that comes and checks if we are compliant with these frameworks. And one thing that I have learned in doing this is that the security frameworks, they do not mandate how your security policy will actually look like. That is something that you write. So if you state that you cannot do DevOps, that's on you. It is not coming from the framework itself. There are different types of compliance. Legislation, which is like the law. Don't mess with the law. You want to be compliant with the law, obviously. Then you have these information security frameworks, which is what I will focus on mostly today. That is around how you manage an organization's information security and how you should employ good practice and be compliant with the intent of some of these controls on how you can follow best practices. And then there is one other, which is a bit more hidden, which is contractual commitments. So normally, if you have some customer expectations or some competitive advantage, or even an actual obligation that is written in contract, all of these things, these different types of compliance, they are put into an information security management system. The name itself and the requirement to have this comes from the ISO27001. But normally you want to put kind of all of the requirements that you as an organization have into one coherent document that you can follow internally. And this is about the best practices. This is about, it's a good idea to have backup. If disaster hits, you want a plan to recover from it. And having a high reliability design is a good thing, because availability is one of these three key items that makes up security, together with integrity and confidentiality, in these information security frameworks. Now, there's two types of this. One, like the ISO 27001, is ensuring that you must have an information management system. You must have a security policy, a backup policy. You must kind of have a plan on what you will do if this or that happens. The type 2, like the SOC2 type 2, is more about looking at the evidence, looking back. Have you followed your own policy? And if you haven't followed your own policy, you will have a non-conformity, and you might not even pass and get certification if you do not do what you said you would do. And here we have an issue sometimes with a game of whispers. So one very concrete example of how the business traditionally has solved the segregation of duty requirement is by separating dev and ops. But if you look at the actual wording of the requirement of the security frameworks, it doesn't actually say that you have to separate dev and ops. There is another way. And one thing that is really, really crucial for platform engineering is about putting more emphasis on things earlier in the development cycle, empowering the team to really provide team autonomy. And this concept of shifting left, it's quite established for testing. So you have your unit tests, you do those early, you're more focused on the things that happens earlier in the development cycle. And then this manual test, this other gating, that happens later, you want to do less of it because they are more costly. We're also seeing this for security, to kind of build in security in your code, in your application. I mean, you secure your API endpoint more so than you put all of the effort onto your firewall. This also goes for security scanning. You don't scan so much as an antivirus agent running on the machine. You scan your software. You check if you have any vulnerable libraries that you got built in. And I would encourage you to also think the same way around compliance. Having the ability within the team to think about compliance and to act on it. In particular, anything that comes with risk. So one way of solving it is that the security department must approve all the changes before they go into production, because that is the risk management process. If you're going to have to wait on decisions, all productivity will grind to a halt. So what you want to do, and one thing that I would encourage, is to bridge your platform engineering practices with your security and compliance. So your internal developer platform, interface it with your information security management system. And of course, we practice platform engineering. So platform is a product. And in your ISMS, there is a concept of an asset. And a product is a typical example of an asset. And if you are the product owner, then you are the asset owner, which ultimately means you're also the risk owner. And by being the risk owner, it means that you can make decisions about the risk. You can approve a release before it goes out into production. We also do this at Signicat. So the risk management with the product owner is one of the key traits that makes up our way of working. Now, you can't, in the Signicat way, approve any risk. So if there is a risk that puts the existence of the company at risk, not all product managers can do this. So there is a threshold onto what risks you can do. But the absolute majority of decisions are really within the control of the team that is developing the features, developing the microservice that makes up the product that gets shipped into production, because you own the code in production. Now, for segregation of duties, it has a few other names: separation of concerns, four eyes principle. And the least intrusive way that we could find in Signicat was to have a mandatory merge request approval. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want other checks in place, but you can automate them. So yes, you want your security scanning. Yes, you want all your test cases to pass before it goes out. But compliance-wise, having a merge request approval is sufficient to fulfill the control of the security framework. Anything else you add on top of that, it is not strictly required as per the security framework. Another area that we spent quite some iterations to kind of try to get just right is around access management. Now, if you own your code in production, that means that you are on call for it. That means that you are the god of this code in production. You need the ability to manipulate it also in production. So you need access in production. Also for the data that goes with it in production. And you need access to all of the observability, all of the application logs that get spit out. And in a microservice architecture, like we have in Signicat, you typically have dependencies on neighboring microservices. And you also don't know upfront the entire dependency chain, because this might change and your neighbor have dependencies that you don't really know always. So we opted to provide all developers access to all application logs across all microservices that runs in the cluster. And we achieve this by pulling out personal identifiable information, because this is, at the end of the day, this is what compliance is all about, protecting customer data. So audit logs, put this into a different system, an audit log system that has a separate role-based access control that has more granularity on it. Usage events, which ties into billing, goes into a different system. This doesn't mean that we don't allow personal identifiable information in the logs. We just limit it. So if you need to debug something, you can enable it, but then you need to tag them so that we can have a shorter retention on it, that we can reduce the risk, but you can do it because sometimes you have to do it in order to debug a particular thorny problem that you can't figure out without it. And the last part that I would highly encourage is to build in the guardrails, build in helper tools to make it easy to be compliant, to have a golden path to be compliant on your IDP. So ensuring that the data locality is in place. We have a scanner that checks if you have backup enabled on all of the database instances or not. And if there isn't any, this will get flagged to follow up so that there is automation to help the development teams to be about compliance. Because for some reason, not everyone wants to constantly think about compliance. So having some guardrails and helper tools is very efficient. Because why do you want to make all this effort and change up all the ways of working if compliance is kind of in the way? I don't think you can afford not to. If you compare elite performers with kind of the low performing teams, it is a huge competitive advantage to be able to move fast. Because at the core of this, it's about short feedback cycles. So if you have an ISMS that is conflicting with modern development practices, change the policy. You really want to engineer your policy to fit with platform engineering, much more so than engineering your internal developer platform to fit with some pre-existing policy. But customers also sometimes have some tricky requirements that might hamper your ability to move fast. But make sure that the price of not moving fast is understood. And one tip is to partner with security, compliance, and legal people, because their day job involves reviewing contracts, and their day job also involves talking to auditors of the security frameworks, and they are excellent at interpreting the intent of the requirement. And I think you might be surprised how clever solutions can come to be if you honor the intent. That can still solve, the customer requirement, the security need, but maybe not in the traditional way, always, like with DevOps. And they are also uniquely positioned to help push back if there are incompatible customer requests that are incompatible with your way of working. So, security frameworks, they don't tell you how to be compliant. That's on you to define. Contracts, they are negotiated. You don't have to agree to all the things the customer wants, and you can negotiate for it and put a price tag on it. And the majority of decisions should be taken by those who has the most context. It will actually, in the end, give you more security, better compliance, and a faster feedback cycle. If you build it, you own it, also in production. And security and compliance department are your friends. Take them out to dinner, understand their pain points, talk about your own, and together I'm sure you will find a great solution on how you can have platform engineering embedded in your security policy and ship software faster. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have enjoyed it, and enjoy PlatformCon.